Hey there. Welcome to this second lesson on getting started with the blues. I hope you had a great time watching the first lesson. It turned out to be so long I had to divide it in halves, but there's almost an hour of content there that really hopefully got us off the ground in understanding what the blues is, experiencing those 12 bars, 4 bars at a time in 3 iterations, playing chords with our left hand, playing melodies with our right hand, the song C.T.'s Blues. Boy, we covered a lot of ground. And there's more to go. I just love it so much. In this lecture, in this little second lesson, there's really 2 concepts that I want to share with you. One is if you and I embrace the concept of inversions, taking those chords that we had, and we had previously played them only in root position, but embracing this really simple concept of inversions, it can not only make us sound more mature and more professional and more refined and slick, but it really is just more efficient for our hands to get from one place on the keyboard to another. So that's the first thing, is inversions. The second is taking the ingredients on the table. You and I, we've been dealing with 1, 4, and 5, those sort of primary dominant chords, those sort of primary components. But I'm going to make a suggestion, and that is that we do a little bit of addition, a little bit of rearranging. Not going to introduce any new materials per se, but adding them in different places in that 12-bar format. So there's the sort of preface of this whole lesson, and I'm excited to get started. So let's get started. This is exercise 2.1, and I hope you'll take a peek at that sheet. It is entitled Inverting Dominant Chords, Inverting Dominant Chords. So what is inversion? Inversion is so simple. It simply means to take a chord in its given form and to flip it over, to take the bottom note and take it off the bottom and replace that same exact note, but an octave higher on the top. Let's take a peek. Look at that first line there. That's C7 all the way to the left. That's C7 in root position. We know how to do this. This is the chord we've been using. If I take the C off the bottom and I put it on the top, you'll see there's an arrow that's there, and I've colored in the top note black just to make it much, much more conspicuous. The C left the bottom, it's now on the top. It's the same 4 notes. It's still E, G, B flat, and C, but they're in a different order. They are in first inversion. I've inverted this once, it's first inversion. Let's do it again. Take the E off the bottom. This is the next one over. Take the E off the bottom and put the E on the top. This is still C7. Amazing. It's the same 4 notes. I've just inverted it once. Once again, pardon me. So this is second inversion. If I take the G off the bottom and I put that guy on the top, this is now C7 in third inversion. First inversion, second inversion, third inversion. If I take the B flat off the bottom and I put that on the top, I've returned to root position. Amazing. 4 different notes in that chord, and so there are 4 different permutations. There's a root position, a first inversion, a second inversion, and a third inversion. Let's do it for F. Take a peek at that sheet. Below the example is sort of a reiteration of C7, but below that is F7. Let's do it together. I've printed it there in both hands, even though for the purposes of this lesson, we're going to be using the chord in our left hand only, but we could try this together, both hands. There's F7 here. I'll put it way up here just for the heck of it. Take the F off the bottom, put it in the top. F7 first inversion. Take the A off the bottom, put it in the top. That's F7 second inversion. Take the C off the bottom, put it at the top. That's F7 third inversion. Take the E flat off the bottom, put it at the top. I've returned to F7 in root position. 1 more to go, so easy, G7. Here we go. G's on the bottom, put it on the top. This is root position. It becomes first inversion. I'll go a bit quicker. It becomes second inversion. It becomes third inversion. And now I've returned to root position. So even though we've just started this lecture, we've just started this lesson, I have an assignment for you. pause this video now and go to your piano, go to your keyboard, and take the time to practice this. Take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes to practice this. This is going to be very, very, very valuable information, and it will need to be very quick for us, very easy for us to be able to use it while we're playing the blues. My advice, take a C7 chord nice and low on the piano and just invert it. Invert it again. Invert it again. And you'll come back to root position. Keep going. And descending. Take the B flat off the bottom, put it on the off the top and put it on the bottom. Take the G off the top and put that on the bottom. Take the E off the top and put that on the bottom, etc., 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 etc. And do that over F7 and over G7. Just take a moment now to make sure that that feels really comfy, really easy. And the next step is how to use those in a harmonic progression, to use smooth voice leading to smoothly get from one chord to the next. I can't wait to share that with you. Hey there, welcome back. So let's keep going. There's a second attachment. This is using inversions for smooth voice leading, This I find incredibly helpful, incredibly practical, and really it just sounds better to our ears, sounds better to my ears anyway. And that is to say this, instead of jumping from one chord to the other in the same structure as we did in the last lesson, here's C7, that's root position. If I jump to F7, all those guys, all those notes have to jump up to get to the next chord. What smooth voice leading says is this: if we can find a common tone between those two chords and keep that common tone, then its neighbors, then those other remaining tones really only have to move by step, and it becomes a much, much, much more efficient process. You can take a peek at that sheet, but I'll show you here on the screen. I'll cut right to the chase. If I had a C7 and I compared it to an F7, I'll ask you to do the same. It's cool to have this little experiment here. If I had a C7 and I also had an F7 and I look down at those chords and I say, gee, what's the note that they share in common? I'm sure that you can see that it's a C. That's what they share in common. And so therefore, smooth voice leading says, if I have a C7, I can keep that C, I can keep that guy, and these three remaining notes would need to move, they would need to jockey, they would need to shift to the other three notes that are missing from an F7 chord. Now let's take a peek at the sheet. If you see on the left-hand side, it says the 1-4-1 progression. That's C7 to F7, back to C7. We use that in the blues. If you look at the right-hand side of the sheet, it says the 1-5-1 progression. That's from C7 to G7 to C7. And in the blues, the key that we're in, C7, in this CT's blues, in this blues that we're doing in this key, we're using that progression as well, 1-5-1, C, G, C. Let's take a look at that left column. This is 1-4-1. The common tone, we've already discovered this between a C7 and an F7, is the note C. So if I can use those inversions, if I can use those different permutations of the F chord to my advantage, it becomes a much, much, much smoother experience. Let's take a peek. I'm at C7, I know the common tone is C. Keep that C. Notice how in that written example, those upper tones move like this, and that gives me an F7 chord, right? The B flat went to A, the G went to F, the E went to E flat. Those voices, as we say in music, these four voices, of those four voices, those three remaining voices moved very, very smoothly. Da goes to here, da goes to here, da goes to here, sorry, da goes to here. There's the F7. This happens to be F7 in second inversion, and then back to C. Practice that. It's so cool. Notice I'm looking at you. I don't even have to look down because I can kind of feel my way through it. That's one of the advantages of these inversions. If I'm only using root position, I always have to be looking down to make sure that I'm accurately playing the note that I want to play, the chord that I want to play, excuse me. Let's do the next line down. This is first inversion C. Here's first inversion C. Remember, the common tone is C. Now that's up here in my thumb, so that's gonna stay. The remaining three, those lower three tones, those guys are gonna move down. That B flat's gonna go to A, this G's gonna go to F, this E's gonna go to E flat. It's that same motion. We've already experienced this exact motion. And I wind up in F7 in third inversion. So practicing this, first inversion C7 chord, first inversion dominant 7 chord, moving to third inversion F7 and back. What does that feel like? How can we get our hand to really conform to those motions? Okay, onward. Second inversion C7 chord. So cool, it's the same premise. It's the same, I don't have to teach it again, it's the same thing. There's your common tone. Notice the top note E still goes to E flat. C stays the same, B flat goes to A, E goes to F. Bang, now we're in F7 in root position. Amazing. C7 in second inversion, F7 in root position. There's just one more to go. This is third inversion C. Same boring thing. This C stays the same. B flat goes to there, this E goes to E flat, this G goes to F, and I wind up in F7 in first inversion. So C7 in third inversion, F7 in first inversion. So practice those. Let's take a peek at the right-hand column. This is 1-5-1, 1-5-1. C7, the premise is the same. The lesson is the same. Find the common tone, move the rest. Quick tangent. Here's a G7 up here in my right hand. Here's a C7. Let's take a look at the two different chords. We can easily see that the G is the common tone. The G is the common tone. So back to our game. C7 in root position, keep the G, move the other tones. There you go. There's your G7. This happens to be in second inversion. And then back to C7 in root position. C7 in first inversion. Keep the G, move the other tones. There's G7 in third inversion, back to first inversion. I'll speed ahead. C7 in second inversion. Keep the G. That one's easy. That's G7 in root position and back to C. C7 in third inversion. Keep the G. There's G7 in first inversion and back. I don't want to be a spoiler, but later in this lesson, there's going to be a chance for me to share with you and to invite you to add an F7 chord into the mix, and we will experience moving from a G7 to an F7. We've not experienced that before. Suffice it to say, when we get there, there are no common tones. These are adjacent neighbors. Look, there's a G7, and here's an F7. You see, there's literally no common tones. And so that motion would simply be parallel motion. If I'm at a G7 and I want to go to an F, I'd simply march down to the F7. No common tones, but we would find the nearest neighbor. So we'll get there. Before we do, again, I challenge you, let's have this lesson be an active lesson. Let's have it be active for you. Pause the video. I'll be here when you get back. Go to the piano, go to the keyboard, practice these 1-4-1 in all of the inversions. In all of them. Second inversion. Sorry. I can't talk and chew gum and teach at the same time, etc., etc., etc. And 1-5-1. Can't wait to share more with you. Hey there, welcome back. This is now very exciting. Let's play. Let's get down to it. Let's use these skills that you've just got under your belt in the last few minutes and hopefully have practiced a little bit. And let's use these skills to our advantage. This is really the beauty of learning new tools and techniques, is to add it to our playing. So take a peek at figure 2-3. I'll do a brief explanation, and then I also want you to have exercise 2-3 and exercise 2-4 on hand. We're going to use the one sheet of exercise 2.3 as the sort of demonstration, But we're also going to use the 3 sheets, the 3 PDFs of exercise 2.4 to take this really much further. So if you look at 2.3, it's CT's blues. It's the same blues that we used in lesson 1. And you'll see in the left hand that I've still got C7 for 4 full measures. Fine, totally fine, totally fine. But in the 5th measure, this is where things get interesting. I'm going to use the concept of inversions so that I can go from this C7 in root position to this F7. This excites me greatly. I just love it. Now I'm in F7 in 2nd inversion, and I'm going to close my eyes. I'm even going to look up. I don't even have to look down. All I have to do is feel my way from that C7 to that F7. Amazing. Notice in the 5th and 6th bars, that's F7. In the 7th and 8th bars, I'm back to C7. Same thing for the G. I hope you practice this. This is so fun. If I leave the 8th bar and I go to the 9th bar, I'm in C7, and now I go to G7. Remember, there's that common tone G. There it is. Oh man, it's so easy and so fun. So without the play along track, without my friendly metronome, I'm just going to freeform it here to give you a very brief demonstration. If I play the head and these at the same time, take special note to both listen and watch how efficient my left hand is. This is extremely exciting. So far, it's the same as the lesson. Here's the change. Oh man, isn't that cool? Back to C7 in root position. I love it. Makes me smile because it's so easy and efficient. So cool. All right, take a peek at attachments 2.4. There are 3 pages. And these are worksheets, folks. These are worksheets. So I really, friends, I want you to take it upon yourself to print them and just get a standard number 2 pencil and try. Even if you're not super literate, don't worry about it. Just try this. Really try it. And if writing and reading is really an impediment, then don't worry. I don't want you to worry about that. You can follow the screen. You can follow the keyboard that's on the screen, and you can learn that way just as well. So don't let the literacy aspect of it gum up the process. I don't want that to happen at all. So whatever's comfortable for you. Take a peek at the first page. This says beginning in 1st inversion. So it says, gee, I'm going to play the same blues, the same head, everything's the same, except I'm going to start with C7 in 1st inversion. There it is. And there it is for 4 bars. And you'll notice the crux of why these are worksheets is that when you get to the 5th bar, it's blank. So I hope you'll piece together and remember that C is common. That goes to here, that goes to here, that goes to here. And there's my answer for the 5th bar. It's my answer for the 5th bar. F7 in 3rd inversion. And will you kindly write that in? E flat, F, A, C, write those notes in, just whole notes are fine. And below the staff, you see there's some blank spaces, friends. Will you write 3rd or 3rd inversion? Just so that you have that cognition, that understanding, that awareness of the fact that this is in 3rd inversion. When we get to the 9th and 10th measures over there, this is the 2nd line of music, the last 2 bars there, the C7, we simply return to where we began. And at the bottom of the page, of course, when we go from C7 to G7, remember that G is common. So this guy, the one that's below the G, he's going to go down to D, right? Oh, I'm sorry. He's going to go up to F. This guy's going to go to B. This guy's going to go to D. Bang. There's my G7. I don't know. My goodness gracious. There it is. G7 in 3rd inversion. I'll hold these down. You could write those in as well. That's measures 9 and 10. F, G, B, and D. And then, of course, back to C7 in 1st inversion for the last 2 measures. So fill in those notes in the staves. Below the staff in those blank spaces, friends, write in 1st inversion, 3rd inversion, 2nd inversion, root position, whatever the answer happens to be. I was happy to help you with that first page. There's 2 more pages to go. So take a pause, just pause it for a second, fill in those sheets, have them at the ready, and let's have some fun. The next thing that I'm going to share with you here is a demonstration of playing all of them. Let me play all of them. I will. All 4 of those. First one in root position, starting in root position. The second one starting in first inversion. The third one starting in. The first one starting in root position. The second one starting in first inversion. The third version starting in second inversion, and the last version starting in third inversion. I can't talk today, but I hopefully can play, so I can't wait to start playing and share this with you. All right, let's keep going. Gosh, this is so much fun for me. I hope you're having a great time to play the blues, the blues that we learned in lesson 1, just a simple 1-4-5 blues. But changing those inversions, using the inversions, using smooth voice leading, it's a game changer for me. It's really a step from the JV bench to the varsity bench. It makes me feel so great to play with those inversions, and it sounds so much better. There's one more thing I want to share with you in this second lesson on an introduction to the blues that is also, I feel like, is a game changer, and this is sort of looking at the harmonic simplicity of the blues. And what I've shared with you thus far is very, very traditional, super, super traditional, staying on the C7 chord for 4 bars, then the F7 for 2, the C7 for 2, staying on the G7 for 2, and then coming back to the C7 for 2. That formula is an old traditional formula. Let's take one step, you and I. We're going to take one step and embellish this a little bit, harmonically speaking. And we will have to change it melodically as well. So take a peek at exercise 2.5, which is called, instead of CT's Blues, it's called CT's Graduation. So we're graduating into something a little bit different, more special, I think, more developed, more interesting, while still preserving the sense of the blues, very, very much so. So you'll see these 2 boxes that are there. Let's cut right to the chase. You'll see these 2 boxes, and in those 2 boxes, in the top box, it used to be C7. That's what we had before, and now it's F7. If you look at the bottom box in measure 10, it was G7. That was where we had 2 bars of G7, and I'm changing that to F7. So this is the most exciting thing, which is to say this. What we have learned thus far is a very traditional structure of the blues. But the blues is like, is like chicken soup. It's like my chicken soup is going to be different than your chicken soup, which is going to be different than my neighbor's chicken soup or your grandmother's chicken soup. Everybody has a slightly different version of chicken soup, you know? So it's a similar situation. Every blues is slightly different, whilst they still have kind of the common core of those 12 bars in common. So let's take a peek. The first thing is I'm at C7 for the first measure, and then I change to F7, but I come back to C7. So instead of having that plateau, that very stable sound, I've got some interesting motion where I've gone to the F7 temporarily, and then I come back to C7. So the shape has really changed, the sound has changed. You'll find that the second 4 bars is the same. It's 2 bars of F7 and then 2 bars of C7. At the end, this is really quite exciting. I've got the G7, and instead of staying on the G7, it's going to sink down to the F7 for some harmonic interest, and then it finally resolves to the C7. So here's the first, let me add to the melodic piece. You know, CT's blues, as you probably know, is called CT's blues because CT stands for chord tones. The melody is comprised entirely of chord tones. And so therefore, in this new blues, CT's Graduation, I have to modify the melodic tones because I have modified the chord. Let's take a close look at that upper box. Since I've modified the chord to F7, I can't play this, which was the original melody, because there's no G in this chord. There's no B flat in this chord. So I've changed it, I've tweaked it melodically up a step to be this. Now you can see there's an A in this chord and a C in this chord. So what was this, boo dot, boo dot, has now become this, boo dot, boo dot. I've changed those pitches so that they will work with that F7. Let's look at the bottom of the page. If you remember, it was do dot, it was do dot, dot. It was that G7, an outline of a G chord. But now, since we have an F7 chord, I've rewritten it melodically to be do dot, dot. And interestingly, in measure 9, when it goes G, 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 F, even though that F is in measure 9 and it's in a G7 chord, it's really for our ears an anticipation of what is yet to come, that F chord that's yet to come. So let me cut to the chase. First things first, I will share this with you using my trusty metronome. I broke that out here, 108, and here it is. Using my inversions, using the new F7 chord, 1, 2, a 1, 2, a 3, 4. Changing the melody and the chords there, right? This is the same as before. These 4 bars are the same, measures 5, 6, 7, and 8. Same as before. Here comes some new stuff. I'm going to the G7, new melody and harmony. I love it. I'm doing it again. Aw. Love it. Yeah. Isn't that delightful? I would challenge you to practice that. And I'm also going to share with you how that sounds with a play-along track just now. right, so let's bring some closure to this lecture, this second lesson in the blues series. Boy, I've had it so much fun. I hope you have too. I smile from ear to ear only because I truly, truly have so much fun. It's marvelous to me that we start with such a simple thing. Do you remember that first exercise where we were breathing to feel 4-bar phrases? And it evolved to being able to play the chords with our left hand and a melody with our right hand, albeit that the melody was just chord tones. And then it evolved even more by us taking that left hand and using inversions. And it evolved even more by using the F7, the 4-7 chord in the second bar and the 10th bar for variety, for harmonic and melodic variety. This is so exciting, folks. This is just the beginning of the journey. These are the possibilities exponentially come to us. They're infinite. It's really one of the most exciting things about playing music, especially in this sort of blues and jazz style. So won't you take a peek at worksheet 2.6 or exercise 2.6, which is a worksheet called Graduation Blues. And this is my sort of final challenge to you, which is let's use these new skills. Let's really embrace this new stuff that we have. I'm comfortable with my inversions. I'm comfortable switching to the 4 chord in those 2 new places. And now we have a more elevated graduated blues. We've sort of graduated into something that's a bit more mature and slick and arguably a bit more sophisticated. So that's really neat. I brought my metronome. I've set it to 108, and here it is. This is the rhythm at the top of the page. It is in that traditional A, B format. First 4 bars are the same as the next 4 bars. The last 4 bars are a contrasting rhythm. I'm just going to tap along to feel the pulse, but I'm going to clap the rhythm and say those syllables that will help me with the articulations. Here we go. 1, 2, join me, join me, join me, join me. Dot, 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 da, do, ba, do, dot. Next phrase is the same. Dot, 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 dot. Da, do, ba, do, dot. Last phrase is different. Da, dot, da, dot, dot. Do, ba, do, da. Let's do it again. Do it again. Dot, rest, dot, dot, dot. Da, do, ba, do, dot. Next phrase is the same. Second A. Dot, 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 dot. Da, do, ba, do, dot. Last phrase is different. Da, dot, da, dot, dot, do, ba, do, da. I'm going to keep that going and demonstrate. I'm going to actually improvise, which is composition, spontaneous composition. I'm just making it up on the spot. But it's the same premise as what I'm asking you to do. If I play a C7 chord here, my options up here are this. Those are the notes that I can use. Here I go. Using that rhythm, using chord tones. When the chord changes, I'll use those chord tones. 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, and. It's just delightful. I hope you will write that blues. I hope that you'll practice that with a metronome. I hope that you'll use the play along track that I've provided to have some fun playing your composition. And I can't wait to get to the 3rd lesson of this course to share more about the blues with you.